right, special episode. After the elevator music is done playing, special episode. We got a Gong Show collab. Very appropriate, given that obviously the most recent podcast episode is talking about it. We'll chat a little bit. Plus, I do have known associations, fellow Canadian with Phil. We're going to talk about that in a second. And then also fellow Medano collector and producer Louis. So I do have that in common. Yeah. But I'm going to speak with Josh of Gongshow. First, Josh, how are you?
I'm well. Hi, Carlos. Thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely. Of course. Well, we've already had at least some indirect collaborations. You have spoken with the Burrell in the past. We refer to him as the Burrell because we must speak of him in the third person even when he's not here.
Okay.
That's part of his retainer. Them's
the
rules.
I like that.
Them's the rules. So a couple of things we're going to talk about. Obviously, the repack discussion will be a big piece of it because that was something I talked about on the podcast with the guys.
Sure.
And that was something that was dropped on. And I did already share the story. And at the time, so I'm going to record this with Josh on Tuesday. This will actually drop on the channel on Wednesday. It'll be the same day that the AMG podcast drops, where obviously we're going to get the AMG side of the exact same thing. Since they're two interconnected, they'll both drop on the same day, and that'll be be able to get both ends of the discussion. I'll include a link in the description to it so that those of you who want to check out that, the two will kind of go as bookends to each other. One of the things that I was
one quick set. Who's AMG?
What's that?
Who's AMG? Just kidding.
AMG?
Just kidding.
Yeah. We have that interconnection. So that's why on my podcast, I made sure to kind of discuss my kind of perspective on it because I was having my lunch and it was interrupted when I was listening to Gong Show and I hear the initials AMG and I'm like, wow. And then I sent a couple of text messages and I'm like, you got some splaining to do. And
okay.
So we filled in some of the gap, but we'll get to the background on that in a second. And of course, the other thing, as I said, I do follow the Gong Show, and we kind of have discussed that as well a little bit in the past. And as a representative, someone who has known Steve Angel for the better part of 20 years, I may have to revoke some barbecue invitations. Rumors have been spreading. Rumors have been spreading about barbecue invitations.
Rumors have been spreading.
Yeah, I got some connections with some people directly involved at the highest levels of Steve Angel's enterprises, and some invitations might be revoked.
I'm sure. I don't know how happy he is about the whole barbecue thing, and he is probably the scariest human being I've ever met in my life. Like when he shakes your hand, I wince a little bit every time because that guy is. You can tell he had to have grown up on a farm, right? I mean, I don't know his backstory, but he's got like the farmer's handshake where he's done work like that his whole life.
Well, I think you should, to be perfectly blunt with you, I think you should be more concerned with his profession. Remember, the nickname is Quincy off of the television show. Like he knows how to make your body disappear.
He knows how to.
That's what I would be more concerned about. Literally,
I know.
It's just throwing it out.
He's a very nice guy and a good vendor, and can't wait to see. We're going to see him in Saskatoon very soon.
You are. That is his neck of the woods. I actually hung out and had dinner with him a couple of months ago when he was popping into Toronto, and we of course I always make a beeline. Basically, I camp out at his booth at Expo. But yeah, I've known him for more than 20 years, which is weird to say. Actually, feels odd, but at the same time, it is true. But yeah, no, he's a good guy, and it's always been fun having conversations about all of this. But yeah, we might have to take care of a balding mustache man. Spreading inappropriate rumors that might have to get taken care of.
Oh yeah, everyone's shocked by that. Steve has great cards. I mean, that's like the one thing I would recommend anyone go check out his booth because his stuff is always fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then, of course, as I said, I've got the affinity with producer Louis. We share our affection of Mike Medano. Obviously, him more from the Minnesota days, and me just in general from his career. I did have a little fun though. My last live stream, actually, he popped in the chat, and I was able to go grab from the shelf one of the repositories of Medano cards that I have when I feel like grabbing some of that stuff and showing it off. It was appropriate use excuses, and I was able to identify your wonderful show card, your Ovechkin, for you guys.
I sent, thank you. Pictures. Yeah, wait. I think I have it. This one, you mean?
Yes.
That I spent. Now, you tell me, $200? Is it how dumb am I?
You're about 190 high.
Even though it's out of 5?
So did Louis send you the thing I included? It's the stamp. So on the stamp on the front is 2011, 2012. It's like All-Star Game. Panini did it a different way, but I don't know if you're familiar. If you ever go to, I'll take a picture for it and send it to you. For the Toronto Expo, when they used to have more than manufacturers, not just Upper Deck, when Pacific used to be around, be a player and all that, they all had show cards, and they were out of 5 out of 10. Panini, of course, does it its own way, but it's the same concept. Stamp on the front, numbering out of
And
what,
then
a
they
5
did
or
the
10.
Father's Day stuff packs
Yeah.
too back in the day, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, but these were specifically, so again, Panini does it their own way, but it's similar concept. It's show cards, and what,
Hmm.
depending on the manufacturer, usually if you bring a box like what Upper Deck does today with the packs, like the show
Yeah.
packs, you bring a box and open it there, crack it open there. They would basically randomize and hand you a card, and that's how they would do it. So it's
Like a
basically
rapper redemption thing.
yeah,
Well, and if you wanted to know why we partnered with AMG on a repack, well, I guess there's evidence number one, right? We're not
mhm,
good at buying cards. We buy cards that we like, and value be damned.
mhm, indeed. But yeah, so now you know. And if there's ever a question about that, feel free to ask, because the show stamp ones, I've seen them a couple of times or two. I've
Okay.
got pages full of them from Medano, so feel free to ask on those ones.
All right.
Uh, Now, real quick, so let's touch on the meat and potatoes of the thing. I wanted to have a little
Okay.
chat first, but let's talk about it. So, you guys did a repack product. You have built a really good platform, so kudos to you guys. You have built quite an impressive
Thank you.
platform for both YouTube, and I assume the audio version is similar, kind of in terms of what you've been able to build on that. I follow the YouTube more than myself. It works for me, but I will say, obviously, you've got different partnerships you built up with different parts of the hobby. You've got the Slab Sharks partnership as well. You've got all these different kinds of things you've been able to build up. So, first thing, what was the
Yep.
initial steps that kind of led you down the path of doing this? And also, why did you want to add this as a vertical to the other stuff you've been working on?
Well, you're a good person probably to talk with this about. Is that first of all, the sports card collecting is niche to begin with,
Mhm.
and hockey is a tiny niche of a small niche. So it's a pretty small community. And I spent a long time in a corporate world and then had a complete midlife crisis and decided to become a hockey card podcaster. But most of my life has spent building businesses,
Mhm.
and I'm very entrepreneurial at heart, and I love to do that. And I just have had this feeling that the maybe what most people would consider the impossible is possible with
Yep.
enough hard work and dedication, and that I really love the hockey hobby, and I think that it's an amazing community of people, and that and I don't say this out of ego, because but I think that they deserve a show like ours. And what I want to be define that it doesn't have to be us, but a consistent presence that is there on a weekly basis, and for us to two times a week, where to help keep people entertained and engaged, to learn more about it. The We do more stuff now, but how I really got started in this is, listen, we've never professed to be experts at anything. I actually don't like the term expert. I think that I love the idea of learning
Mhm.
all throughout your life, and I never want to stop learning. And I like to research. I like to learn new things. And so when Troy, the original co-host of our podcast, and I were very good friends, when we were got back into cards, like so many people did, we would text each other all day long about stuff we were learning and finding out. And when one of us got the idea to do a podcast, that's essentially what our podcast became. It's sort of the documentation of our learning process
Mhm.
throughout the hobby, and that's what we continue to do today. And so, and it just kind of has taken a life of its own, Carlos. It's come to the point where I can do it full time. And then my I love content, I love the hobby, and I like making business and producing businesses. And one of the things that so as a content producer, there's two ways to be entrepreneurial. Essentially, you can either have sponsorships, like we both have,
Mhm.
or you can use your platform that you built, and hopefully the trust you've built with your community, to produce your own products or services. And so we're kind of experimenting with both. And Repack came about just based on conversations, and we got to know the AMG people, and it's no secret that repacks are very popular. I just saw
Mhm.
an article not too long ago. The was a Courtyard IO 80 million in sales last month off of their
I've seen that.
repack.
Yeah, a massive number. Mhm.
Massive, right? And so they're very popular in the hobby. And like most things, it starts with an interesting conversation like that. Like, wow, did you realize that that repacks were this popular? And then you start talking and breaking down, and everyone gives their opinions about, what they like, what they don't like, what the perceptions of repacks are, what the, again, your opinion on the the product as a whole. And it just, and through those conversations and getting to know that it was a lunch at the National that really solidified it.
Hmm.
We just happened to meet up there and we just had a great conversation. And what we found is that we really aligned on, it sort of started, well, if you ever did a repack, how would you do it?
Hmm.
And we kind of each started riffing, and we found like, holy cow, like we actually we think about this the exact same way, and it took off from there.
Okay. So that was kind of the impetus that got that going, which is fair. Now, as you said, you were correct in saying that kind of in the space. I've had that conversation kind of as a discussion topic is that no, in the space, since it is so niche, and then you focus on hockey cards specifically, which makes it, narrowing the niche even more so.
Way more niche,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, way more niche. You're right. The only real ways to make that a viable business wise, if that's what you're going to go with, are kind of sponsorships or products. Those are the two ways that you can kind of extract some kind of value from it and then let the audience decide how much or how little they want to participate in it. So I think that's fair. So you get the kernel of it, you have the discussion, you go back and forth and kind of brainstorm what this concept would be. uh, AMG obviously has certain capabilities that you kind of touched on. That from a sourcing perspective, a shop will know how to source things. That's kind of one of the things that they have to do for their own business as well. So that's one thing they have an understanding of, which is their expertise. And then your side of it is kind of the branding side. You can have the concept, you can promote it, you can do those sides of it. But I guess the question would be then it is viable. You just talked about the Courtyard IO example. So obviously there is a market for it. Part of it, my opinion. So I'll throw my opinion in and then I'll get your take and then with the question following that. So my take is that part of the reason for that is that a lot of the current boxes today, because of how expensive some of them are, the value proposition on it struggles. And one of your favorite products, because I do kind of listen in here from the episodes as well, the X2000, for example. So a
Yeah.
product like that, which has some nice cards in it, but for a lot of people, so relative to the box price, a lot of people may not be as keen on it because they're looking at what they potentially pull out of most boxes, the average box, versus if you really pull something that you really like, a certain insert or something, oh, this is really cool, then great. But for your average box, it may feel like, oh, well, I paid how much and I got what? And that's kind of a struggle with a lot of these products. It's not one or two. It's just a lot of the products as they've gotten more expensive, especially because at a different price point, people would feel differently about the exact same product.
Yeah. No, this is the whole, it comes down to, and I don't know if I have the best answer here, and I'm still learning in this regard. It's sort of, the whole hobby is based on perceptive value.
Yes.
There's no underlying economic fundamental behind a card, and that makes it worth. I just saw Caitlin Clark's green kaboom sold for 375,000.
Hmm.
It's just a piece of shiny cardboard like all the rest. And so what makes that worth 400,000 more so than any hockey card has sold for in years publicly, right? Everything is perceptive. And so one of the things that I've actually had my eyes open to by Louis on our show is not trying to project how I value the hobby onto everyone else and make huge blanket sweeping statements, right? Because when Louis will tell you when he goes to the hobby shop and buys a box of flagship,
Hmm.
he doesn't look at it like an investment into your retirement account. Where,
Hmm.
okay, I invested 115 US into this box, and what's my exact ROI, and did I beat the S&P 500
Sure.
on that to base his value on that box. And so some people look at opening stuff from the enjoyment of the process, the idea of the chase, the surprise of what's there, and then other people look at it like the lottery fantasy, which drives so much of the hobby. Well, if I buy a $200 box of Reloaded, could I hit a $2,000 card
Hmm.
and get a rush of excitement from that? And I think that every way to value anything we do in the hobby on that whole spectrum is valid,
Hmm.
right? And what I think we do at times is we often share our opinions and project that like that's how the whole world should think, where your opinion or my opinion is 100% valid, But when you look at like a repack, and I don't open a ton of wax. I've never even I've never even bought a repack, right? So that's because of some of the concerns that I've had.
Hmm.
And but my experience, obviously is, there's thousands and thousands of people that apparently enjoy these products because they vote with their wallets. It's like the whole grading thing. That's almost a better example, right? Find a content person that will say anything positive about PSA and I'll give you $5. But yet they grade 2 million cards a month. So how do you connect that for me? If nobody likes PSA, then how do people willfully choose to open their wallet and spend the amount of money to grade 2 million cards a month? Right? And so there must be some value to that, right? There must be criticisms, complaints, whatever it might be aside. And so we looked at the whole repack thing knowing that sure, it's a topic that people like us, like to examine from all the angles and throw, share criticisms or concerns about, which is great.
Hmm.
And we thought, well, how could we maybe do it differently and then test it? I mean, I have no idea how people are going to receive it. It's just it's a test. It's something that we're excited about, and I'm really really excited. And I got really excited about this when I saw the checklist from AMG of we agreed on parameters of the types of cards we were looking for,
Hmm.
and they came through with we were blown away. And so my excitement almost has nothing to do. It's about the cards, and that's one of our principles is that the cards are always the stars. If you focus on the cards, no matter what you're doing, and whether it's deliver information or products or services, if you deliver great cards, I think more often than not you'll be okay.
Hmm. I think it's fair. So let me touch on a couple of things you said there. One of them is I agree that the perceptive value is important, and that's kind of the point that I was making about the differentiator. Now, for better or worse, for good or bad, I've talked about this background wise, just so that people kind of to level set, so that people remember. People on this channel already know this, but I'll just quickly reiterate it. I'm one of those folks that kind of stuck around, like I was collecting as a kid, but I had slowdowns, but I
Sure.
never really had a break. So there's good and bad to that. One of them is I wasted a lot of money. The good is that I was around for a lot of these waves. I was able to see a lot of.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, the change doesn't feel dramatic because it was gradual. I watched the components move step by step. So it's one of those things. Speaking of, you brought up flagship. So when I look at flagship, I can follow the progression of how it's changed and how the pricing has changed and also the content has changed. But I also have recollection. I never opened a ton of flagship because I wasn't a big young gun chaser. But I remember opening a couple of boxes of the year that was the Marc-Andre Fleury rookie year, which the fact that he is now old and he should basically be retired and, we're at the end of the run makes me feel old and it makes me feel very sad because I remember opening boxes of his rookie year and I pulled a Marc-Andre Fleury young gun. But I pulled a Marc-Andre Fleury young gun out of a $75 Canadian flagship box at the expo. It was 75 Canadian. And
Yeah.
and they were and that you could get that on a table all day long. Now, it's gone up a little bit over the years, but you have to think about what that price point was. But if you think about it in comparison, that's what I say about the perception thing. At $75 Canadian, your expectations are at a certain level. Basically, as long as you're getting the young guns you're supposed to get and a couple of inserts here and there, for the most part, you can't really ask for more. Anything beyond that is bonus. But as we increase the price point and we keep going up the scale, so I use the EX2000 one since you're a big fan of it. But if I take that same EX product and I cut the box price in half and keep the contents the same, the feelings and expectations of the people, they might look at the exact same box, same content, same results, and maybe feel differently about it. It might feel like, oh, okay, yeah, you know what? It wasn't like a perfect box, but it was okay. So the price point alters the perception
Well,
of it.
that's the
If
free
I,
market, though, right? That's the
yeah,
free market effect. Like one of the exactly what you're talking about. I think the best example is 23-24 Series 2 with the Bedard Young Guns.
yeah,
In theory, like this, that card was we talked about it. I'm sure you did too on our show for a year and a half before it
mhm,
came out. The excitement, the anticipation. I can't think of no. Again, you've been around doing this longer than I have, so you probably have other examples, right? But was like nothing that has happened since the pandemic times, at least for sure. And one of the things that I'll never forget about that is a month after it came out at that Spring Expo, there should have been so many, and especially since the Outburst 101 hadn't been pulled,
Mhm.
in theory, the floor should have been littered with pack wrappers.
Mhm.
Like people should have been opening it anywhere, everywhere, hunting that down. But it got priced, and who knows who the catalyst of that is, right? Whether it was Upper Deck itself, or distributors, or hobby shops, or all three. I don't know the inner workings of how that happened, but and you tell me if you observe something different. But I almost saw none of it being opened, and so what that told me is, well, the free market said the price is too high. We're out. I was
Yeah.
out. I didn't buy any of it.
Yeah. It was the breakers predominantly. So it's kind of to answer your question there. I can't give you an example that matches to that because we had passed post COVID. It changed the whole dynamic. Enough money was funneled into enough of these categories of the pricing, because there was always rookies that were sought after and anticipated, and people were interested. I remember some very silly ones. I remember like 99 2000 was Patrick Stefan. And I remember people getting excited when they pulled Patrick Stefan, unironically. So that was a real thing at the time. I remember the SPX product, and I think they had an autograph version of the Patrick Stefan. And if you pulled that one, that was a big card. Now, in retrospect, was that a great card? Not so much. That
Yeah.
one may not, maybe a little bit on the lower tier. Let's just say not the best. But there was always excitement for the rookies, but the rookies were allowed to do a little bit. So the pricing didn't immediately shoot up like that Marc-Andre Fleury one. He was the chase for that particular year's Young Gun class. So I paid $75 for the box. I pulled the Marc-Andre Fleury, and I was able to sell it right away for like it was 125 or 150 bucks. So yeah, but in retrospect, think about what a Marc-Andre Fleury type prospect would do in a similar type product today, same Young Gun. It would be priced way higher than that, in addition to the box being higher as well.
It's so complicated though, because you go back to look at Fleury and how little was produced. The pop count of his Young Guns PSA 10 is so small.
Mhm.
His card is sells for more than his Young Guns PSA 10 sells for more than Sidney Crosby's, because there's like
Yep.
48 of them. It's almost 4,000 US, between 3,500 now and 4,000 US. Right, and so that it's all these little pockets in time, and all the variables of the environment that go into it kind of create these opportunities. And I think that's one thing about the hobby that makes it exciting, is that it always changes. But what I think that we as a community too often forget is, as much as we like to shake our hand at be the old man on the lawn screaming at Upper Deck or whoever for prices, we have the biggest and most important vote: our wallets.
I'm still doing that to Billy regardless, just to be
Yeah.
clear.
Well, fine.
Regardless, I'm doing that to Billy just on principle. Like, doesn't matter
But
what's
but
going
but
on.
actually, we control the price more than Upper Deck does, because if they raise the price so high on a box that we as a group say this is no longer, there's not an equitable exchange of value here, perceptive or not, I'm out,
Mhm.
and we stop
Yeah,
buying the product, then what happens to the price? It goes down.
for sure. I do think that so it's a separate conversation. I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but just so we're on the same page as well. The breakers do play into that dynamic as well, because the breakers absorb a chunk. As you talked about that example with the Bedard and the Young Gun. Well, yeah, while on the floor of the expo, you may not have seen the pile of wrappers. There was still a pile of wrappers being opened. Like there's a ton of the Bedard Young Gun out there because the breakers open up a ton of it. They opened cases
Yeah.
and cases and cases. So it still got absorbed. In some way, the market was still able to absorb it, which in turn kept the box prices higher than they probably, if it had been allowed, if just the rank and file person, you look at this box price and everybody says, no thanks, I'm out. We don't get a lot of the Bedards in the marketplace, which keeps the price on those really high. But then eventually the box price has to adjust so that somebody opens it. Somebody's got to be the one to actually take the plunge. But enough breakers were able to open enough product to get those cards out there, so that today there's, you guys were doing the tracking of how many Bedard, PSA 10 Young Guns, and the number just kept going up and up and up, and it was massive
Most
numbers.
ever, highest hockey card population count for a PSA 10 of all
Yeah.
time.
So even with the high box price, somehow they still made it onto the marketplace
Yeah.
because of those avenues that were available.
And if you don't like breaking, you don't like box prices, and you're a single person, in a weird way, you should be thanking everyone that buys a break or buys a box, because the only way those singles hit eBay or the secondary market, or however you buy your cards, is because people open them out of boxes. So it's all kind of connected within an ecosystem. And like I said, to get back full circle, at least from my perspective, I try really hard not to judge what other people like. Because who am I to tell you if, the guys UPC are good or not? We all seem to love to do that, but the older I get, maybe the more, let you be you, and be a voice for fairness, for authenticity, for obviously companies approaching things in a honorable way,
Mhm.
but and not let anything get off the rails or crazy, or let anything get destructive. But again, try not to judge how you hobby versus how I hobby.
I think that's fair. It's a good sentiment. That said, I will still make fun of Eric and his Boston Bruins because that's what I do. It's a matter of
Oh
principle
yeah.
in that at that point. It has to be done. But no, I think it's a fair sentiment. But I think also kind of touching on how this plays into now what you guys are doing, all that box discussion and the pricing and all those things to say that as the prices kept going up, we have the breakers, we have all these forces that are playing into it, absorbing it. The ROI got progressively worse and worse because we were starting off so high. And that's the same thing with the rookies. That's why the Bedard is kind of an extreme example of Bedard could still become a great player. And to be
Mhm.
honest, I still have a lot of faith that I think as that team, you guys did the comparison, to be perfectly honest, the Sidney Crosby Penguins you guys were comparing it to, that team was still way better than the Chicago Blackhawks team, to be perfectly blunt. They scored 100 more goals. The Chicago Blackhawks team is literally
Yeah,
atrocious.
yeah. It's hard to compare
Yeah,
eras in 20 years ago,
for sure.
but I
But
get
I'm
your
but I'm
point.
just looking at what those teams actually were able to produce off. Let's just put it this way: I'm not convinced you weren't on the wing for the Chicago Blackhawks. They just put you out there with some skates. Like it was whoever they could find at that point. There's just
Mm.
nobody any good. But even if he does, the problem was because Bedard started off so high because of all the initial. And then if he doesn't produce right away, which he hasn't in a couple of years, so even if in a year or two from now, and he's still a very young guy, he started at 18. So I think he's only turned like 20 or thereabouts right now. Well, let's say he figures it out by 22. That still gives him about 2 years before he starts turning it
Sure.
around. The price of the card would have dropped so much from its high that all of a sudden now you'd almost have to like try to work your way back
Mm.
up. So if you bought at the high, you're screwed anyway. It doesn't matter if he becomes the player then you're hoping for, and all of a sudden he becomes, an MVP candidate year after year. Now you have to kind of push the work against all that downward momentum that now you had a couple of years from because you started so high, as opposed to the old players who used to be like, yeah, there'd be a little momentum, but you'd start kind of here. Even at Connor
Mhm.
McDavid, you had room to go up because he wasn't starting at like max. He wasn't starting all the way at the high level. He was able to work his way up to it, and then he kept going beyond that point as he got better and as he did more things.
Well, prospecting hobby conversations are not fair to the player,
Yes.
because anyone that spends, so what, the Bedard Exquisite Shield just sold for 123,000.
Yeah.
If you try to your best to logically break down the motive for spending 123,000, you're not buying that card expecting Connor Bedard to have a John Tavares type of career, which is a great hockey career, maybe a Hall of
Mhm.
Fame hockey career, but that makes no sense in the
Mhm.
vein of 123,000. And so that's like one of the things that we try really hard, and it's just a nuanced kind of thing, right? It takes a long time in this hobby to grasp. Is, as a hockey player and as a person, yes, Connor Bedard deserves more rope. But when people are throwing down 15, 25, 50, $100,000 a day on his rookie cards, the expectation that comes with those kind of sales is probably unrealistic.
Mhm.
But you're buying, you're spending that money assuming he's going to be one of the greatest players of all time,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Why else would he spend in this hobby $123,000 on a rookie card?
Yeah. But that's the reason why I use that example just to say that the way the hobby has decided to take this with the prospecting side of it is you've almost created the scenario where everyone's going to fail. Like it's almost impossible to succeed unless you year one win the Art Ross, win the Stanley Cup. You got to win everything basically right out of the block, or you're done.
But that's the lottery fantasy, whether it's boxes or repacks or singles, that drives the hobby, right? It's your guy, Mike Manano, has had an amazing career, maybe the greatest career of any U.S. born hockey player ever. Right?
Statistically, he's got the stats right now.
Make that argument, right? If you compare the values of his cards to a Macklin Celebrini or a Connor Bedard, or who have relatively done nothing to this point as far as actual results on the ice and accomplishments and awards to merit those prices, it is sort of, to somebody, if you're trying to explain this hobby to an alien, like that would be kind of hard to do, right? Where it's like, well, I can get an equivalent amazing Mike Modano patch auto for $150, $200. That would be many thousands for a player who's relatively done nothing. But so the answer though is that it's that Mike Modano is what he is, where it's the enticement, it's the elixir of what Macklin Celebrini could be. And that's what the hobby votes with their wallet. That's where they say is that we prefer the chase of what could be versus what is.
Oh, for sure, and that's always been the case. But I think the only point that I'm making with it is that it has become more exaggerated in recent years. There's always been that element of it. Like I said, the Patrick Stephon thing, that card sold for a lot more than what the average card would have compared to some established players at the time. But the relative dollar amounts we're talking about, what it actually would have cost at the time to participate in that, was much smaller dollars. If you want an equivalent Connor Bedard to what some of those Stefan cards were, it costs you many, many multiples, even in today's dollars.
Yeah. Well, don't you think the answer, the reason is it just the mainstreaming of collecting, that was so underground for so many years, and even when it was popular, like in my time, in the late 80s, early 90s, during the whole junk wax era thing, it was still pretty much an underground thing, where now you have Tom Brady opening up card shops and every celebrity in the world and huge companies corporatizing or formalizing sort of the foundation of the industry, that this is sort of a byproduct of that.
It's an element to it. I think it's a chicken or the egg. You can just decide which one kind of, the rush of people coming in, pushed it back up, made the dollar signs more viable, brought in the corporate folks who then brought in more money, kind of played into it, and it all just kind of spun around and came together. Now, believe it or not, with all that whole conversation, folks that are listening, I can bring it back over to kind of the repack topic that we were going to get into, and that is this way. All these factors that we were just talking about are to say what has made the ROI of the current modern day box challenging. And that, for me, is why the repack became an attractive alternative to a lot of folks. Because in concept, if you just take it at its concept, forget about who does it well or does badly. In concept, even if I say that the floor, and we'll talk about the whole ceiling and floor thing, we'll talk about that here in a second. But even if we talk about the whole ceiling and floor thing, I open a box of this product. If I get a bad box, I get maybe 10% back. Sometimes worse, to be honest, depending on how expensive that box is. But if you offer me, this box, this mystery box that you've created, but the floor is 50%, that's not great. But at the same time, it could be 10 times better than some of these hobby boxes. Yeah. So for a person who's sitting there who does want to take a bit of a gamble, and one of the key points that I said is we are still, the whole mystery box concept is not a new one. But the idea, it's still a gambling thing. Because if I want to just collect the card that I want to collect, if I want a Modano card, there might be Modano cards in your checklist. I don't believe there are, but if there are, regardless, if I want
there's a Century Modano Legends auto.
Perfect. So if I want that specific card, though, a 1 in 300 chance isn't necessarily the most logical way for me to approach that. I would probably be better off seeking out that single. But if I want the chance to pull maybe potentially all this other stuff or the Modano, if that happens to be the way the draw comes up, then that makes sense. So it's different audiences depending on what the people are looking for.
100%. You don't make something like a repack with the idea that I'm going to convince somebody that doesn't want to buy repacks to buy repacks.
Yeah.
That's not the goal of what we're doing. And there's a million different ways to go about this hobby and to pick and choose how you buy stuff. And our goal is to, knowing that it's already a very popular vertical and that people do like it. So how can we introduce a product that competes well in that vertical or in that marketplace on, all the factors that go into competition: quality, price, authenticity, all that good credibility, all that good stuff.
For sure. So one of the things that you guys were talking about when you were introducing it was, and I'll come back to the whole floor conversation here in a second. But one of the things you guys were talking about in the introduction and the announcement piece is that you were trying to, as part of that brainstorming session you had, that was the impetus for it. You guys were trying to resolve for certain issues you foresaw in the way it was being done with some other folks. So, what are the issues you foresaw, and how is it that you're trying to resolve for those potential pitfalls when you're trying to provide your version of it?
Yeah. So basically, the principles or value proposition, however I'm a marketing guy, so I tend to use, and I hate marketing buzzwords. So sorry, I tend to use those. But it comes down to three things: it's no junk, no skunks, and 100% transparency. Right. And those are lofty things to live up to. On the junk thing, we've already kind of had to make, again, we put this out there. We're trying to put this whole journey out there. We just had to make a early sort of amendment to our constitution around that. In, one of the things that we connected with AMG right away was that we wanted memorabilia to be game used,
Mm-hmm.
and we feel very strongly about that. A problem though with that is, as you know, 99.9% of all rookie material stuff is not game used. It's player worn or event worn. And some of those valuable cards in the hobby and some of the most valuable cards in our checklist are rookie patch autos. And so we're, that kind of put us in the decision point of, well, do we have a product with no rookie material, or do we, and we haven't sold anything yet. We're still kind of building the product. We're letting people behind the curtain. Do we sort of amend our approach there and say all non-rookie material is game used, which we still feel very strongly about, and then disclose anything that's not game used on the checklist so that people can see this is a cup Logan Cooley RPA that has player worn material. This is a cup limited logos Owen Power RPA, and that's one of the cards that is game used. So then we'll disclose it's game used, right? And so really kind of focusing on, and then where we did draw a hard line in the stand that we're sticking to is on the sticker autos thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not trying to throw shade because some people like them, but for our sensibility that we wanted to have only hard signed autos. And just but more so than that, use the collective experience that we've been able to accumulate AMG and try our best to deliver value and a cool card in every box. Like, is this and that's the sort of the litmus test that when we have gone through the checklist and we've removed a number of cards from that checklist. I'll give you a good example. And there's these are ones that you'll know, and these are pretty nice cards. We, in our initial batch, we had some draft day marks
Mm-hmm.
or some of the equivalents, like from chronology. There's one from chronology, I believe it was a Brad Marchand, really nice auto, a valuable card. There is I think it was called like Marks of a Nation with Jonathan Taves from
Mm-hmm.
Team Canada, and they were manufactured patches. And we took them out and we're replacing them right now, even though listen, a lot of people, as you know, when SB Game Used comes out and there's the Macklin Celebrini or Lane Hudson draft day marks, people spend thousands of dollars on these things. But we were just like, uh, uh, let's hold off on that. We're like a notable nameplates we would definitely include on the checklist because those are the one of the sort of the nameplate type cards that are game used. And so it's a work in progress, but we're giving our best effort. It won't be a perfect effort. You don't do something like this with the whole notion that, listen, we have the entire world figured out. We're the world's foremost experts on everything. We've never done a repack, Carlos. We're learning on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, as in any sort of business mentality, if you're honest and you approach things in an ethical way, and you are humble and you take feedback and you're willing to um, make things right where it's deserved, then I think you have a good chance of being successful. But our goal is not to be perfect, because that's unattainable.
Hmm. Sure.
So that was
No,
our
that's fair.
approach on the junk side. The skunk side, which gets into the whole floor and
Hmm.
ceiling thing too, and that's a tricky one, right? Because you do want to. It's easiest to quantify value for people, and I think that because it's something we all inherently understand, and it's a leveling point that. But the reality is, like, when you really start to think about, well, how do you do this? The values of cards change every day. So
Hmm.
let's just be real that 6 months from now, there's cards that that may be today valued at $100 that are presently worth 50. There's maybe cards that we valued at 100 that are presently worth 200. So it kind of gets back to, you know, I looked at the checklist, and instead of starting at the top, I started at the bottom of the value scale, and I said, if I open this box, what's the first thing that would come to my mind? Would it be, what's this worth? Or, holy crap, this is kind of a cool card? Then maybe, what is it worth? And if we can deliver on that, and at least deliver a cool card that has inherent hobby or collector value, and do our best to have an equitable overall value to the product, then I think that we'll be okay in that. And AMG shares this as well, because to provide that chase, you need a ceiling and a floor. We could
Hmm.
do a $200 repack with 300 $200 cards. That's feasible. But the hobby has kind of told us that that's not what it wants. If that's what the hobby wanted, everyone would do that. In a way, it would cut a hole, but they want the chase. So then you're like, well, how do you create sort of that gulf between the ceiling and the floor, where you're still on the high end, you're providing a big enough chase to drive people to want to buy the product, but on the low end, helping everyone feel that at least you've made an honest effort to deliver value. And that's a tough balance to make. And the one thing that we did talk about is, without sharing the spreadsheets, is that we did consciously try to raise the floor, and without lowering the ceiling, and took a little bit less profit to. And I'm not even trying to say that from like a, oh, we're so great perspective. I just think it's smart business, right? Because when you talked about earlier, yeah, I love opening boxes like from Upper Deck,
Hmm.
and I have the worst luck ever. I just, so I get so jealous of all these people that that are on Instagram, are like, oh, I open a box and look at these 12 amazing cards I got, and I'm like, this never happens to me. And as a business person, just taking the the only that lens, it's like the smart thing to do is to do your best so that everyone that does you the honor of trying your product has a good experience, because then they come back to make more, right? I mean, it's not a selling one 300 box repack does not make it a viable business, right? To be a viable business, you need people to say, oh, this was a relatively good experience, and I think I want to do it again.
Hmm. Now, one thing I'll add, Josh doesn't have the benefit of this, but I did chat with Blake from AMG, who was participant in building that side of it, and actually asked him about the exact same question, because I wanted to get from their perspective the philosophy behind what they were looking for that same thing that I was talking about, the fluctuation. What happens when you're looking, especially at the floor. On the ceiling
Yeah.
side, some fluctuation is not a big deal necessarily. It's whatever. But on the floor, it becomes more important because you don't want to see something collapse. And what he was kind of chatting with on it, so I'll provide this for you as well, is that he said part of their thought process was they were looking for cards that had some, cool factor, kind of what you're talking about, but also something that was maybe more settled. Basically, they were looking for cards that didn't have as much potential to fluctuate. They weren't as, risky the same way that maybe a rookie who is hot right this second is fine. So, like when you put it in
Yeah.
the box today, it's good, but in 6 months, who knows? something that maybe is had some price movement, but now it's kind of settled in at a certain level. And then if something new happens, then so be it. But it's not shooting all the way up and down every single week, and you have no idea where it's going to. It's like a moving target. So they were kind of targeting stuff that is like, it's already at least got some established level to it, at least for the last little while, so that it's not this random thing where it's a hot potato and you're wondering what's going to happen by the time you put it in a box.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely true. When you look at the checklist and what they came up with, there is some rookie cards or content obviously on the checklist, but more so it's the blue chip kind of stuff and cards that have a very solid or foundational value in the hobby. And and that goes down to the last sort of tenant or value proposition is around transparency. And so what we've committed to do to the best of our ability is to be as transparent as humanly possible and continue to push in that effort. And number one, we have a checklist site. So
Mm-hmm.
that is a convenient environment to publish the entire checklist of the repack too. We're in the process of doing that right now and should be up in a few days. And so that was, we'll never sell one where we don't publish the checklist. Like I just not comfortable doing that. I want people to buy the product, to judge the product on the merit of the cards and with their eyes wide open. And if you feel that the floor isn't sufficient for the price, then I wouldn't expect you to buy the product. Right? And so we're excited enough about what AMG has done on the sourcing end to
Mm-hmm.
be very confident in that approach. And then beyond that, we're having a third party box and package it so that I don't want anyone to question. It's like, well, did you? Because we're going to hand number the boxes too, just to be kind of cute and kitschy with our founders edition to say, well, that the quote unquote big chase card is in box number 62. Well, we don't want to have any idea, and we don't want AMG to have any idea of that. And then the hardest one for me is we've agreed that we won't open any of our own product. We won't get high on our own supply. Sort of. I mean, there's plenty of stuff but I just don't want, because that's kind of like a no win. The more you think about it, environment where if like we go on to Rip Party and open a bunch of boxes of Reloaded and hit crappy cards that people think are the low end, then everyone says, oh, that Reloaded is not no big good cards. And then if we go on and we hit the big chases, then we loaded our boxes, right? So it's like,
So you're saying I'm not going to see a video on social media with Tosh from Delaware with a Fu Manchu opening up one of these boxes?
no,
No, I'm not.
no. But it's tempting because I wanna the experience of opening my own stuff, but it's just like there's no, it's just not probably right to do from an
Yeah,
ethics
it's not
stand.
probably. So Josh, let me just take a stance on this. No, it wouldn't. It's one of the conversations I had with the AMG guys. So I just quick aside, just where we were talking about before we hit record. My challenge to the AMG guys and kind of why I gave them a couple of them a hard time. It's not because I need to be. I don't specifically work for AMG, but I work with
Yeah,
AMG.
sure.
So I said to them, it's like, no, you don't have to tell me everything you're going to do, but when it is something that is significant, it is something in a category that has a lot of question and controversy to it potentially. It is, again, as an indirect representative, there is a downstream impact. Anybody who's associated also has to kind of be able to answer to it. So that's why I said to them, it's like, no, heads up would have been good just from that perspective. As long as you guys are comfortable, I'm comfortable, but it is important that you don't want anything that even resembles impropriety. So you have to be over careful to make sure that anybody associated with it directly or indirectly doesn't have any kind of an edge or even a perceived edge, because that won't look good for
Yeah.
anybody.
And if there's other ways we can be more transparent, we will. We're learning and getting feedback from people. I don't know. What do you think? What else should we do?
Well, I think one thing that's going to be a challenge for you guys, and I'll just tell this to you now because obviously it may be something that will come up in the long run. Just understanding the space the way that I do, the social media side of it for this type of product, because there's always a question for it. Cards HQ is doing their own thing, and they talk about the same kind of thing. Literally, they said, "Oh, PSA is boxing our stuff." Like we don't, we're basically double blinded. They're mixing up the boxes, so it's separate from us. Similar concept to what you're talking about, but it's a specific brand in the hobby that's doing it. The the question that's always going to come up, And when you do it the way that you're going to do it, you already said, and I'll get a little ahead here because since it's something that's going to come up. You guys talked about having a distribution model where you're going to have boxes that are going to be in Canada and boxes that are going to be in the US to facilitate and make easier the transfer for people that want that. AMG in the Instagram live you guys did. AMG is going to have some of those boxes. So
Yeah.
let's play out the scenario. You guys don't touch it. You don't open any boxes, not even Tosh with the Fu Manchu. We're all
Yeah.
good. So somebody goes and buys a box at AMG. AMG, who sources the cards, which we've fully acknowledged in this conversation and in the rest of the social medias related to it. So I go to AMG, I open up a box of this new product, and I pull one of the biggest hits right out of the box that's in AMG. Even though you guys had it done by a third party and presumably randomized and all that good stuff, it's the EPAC question. I've had this conversation with the Upper Deck folks. No matter how you say that you've distributed product, because don't forget, EPAC has the stuff. If I go to EPAC and all of a sudden all the good stuff is showing up when EPAC shows up, I'm going to be like, so did you save all the good stuff for EPAC? That's the
Yeah.
question that comes up all the time. And that's with them trying after all these years to figure out the mix. No. A bunch of the hits, even the Connor Bedard one, Billy came out and said, no. It is not an EPAC. It is in the physical boxes somewhere, presumably. And they had to go that far to say, like, no, it's not an EPAC. Well, why would he have to do that if people didn't have that question? Every time it's an EPAC product. And that's just one example, though, if you understand what I'm
Well,
getting
that only matters if there's a conscious effort to deceive people, right? Because you could make the same logical argument if all the boxes were in one warehouse and you had warehouse work, an order gets placed, warehouse worker goes to the column on the right and picks a box versus warehouse worker goes to the column on the left and picks a box, right? There's no distinction. It's a difference without a distinction, right? In that the anything. Listen, there's a million ways you could try to poke holes through this, and they're all valid to some degree. But ultimately, any consumer purchase decision we make comes down to trust at some level. If you go to the jewelry store and buy a diamond ring, what percentage of those people are qualified jewelers to know that they can assess and is that diamond authentic, or is it the grade that they were actually sold what it is? When you go to the grocery store and you buy the organic bag of apples, were you at the farm and saw how those apples were grown and cared for and whether pesticides were used? And that's a bigger issue here in the US. And I think you guys have better food in Canada, honestly, than we do. But, and so we have to trust at almost every purchase we make. We decide it's a trust decision. And so, that's where, and we're a very public brand. We're not some rando, repack company that comes out of nowhere. And so people will have to make that choice. Do they trust our intentions, our ethics, and how we approach it? Or do they not? And if you don't trust it, then I presume you wouldn't buy it.
Sure. No, I think that's fair. But as I said, I have to pose it because I already know that the hobby is conspiratorial by its nature. So
Sure.
anything that opens
Fair
the
question.
opportunity for it. And like I said, there because you have a multi-distribution model here, because some boxes are going to go to location A and some boxes are in location B. That's one of
I
the
would say that
questions
that's
is
not
going to come up.
ideal, but given the climate, as you know, that we're in, that and our show is actually about 50-50 US and Canada as far as our audience and people that follow us. And
Mhm.
so it kind of, there's certain logistical issues. It's like, if somebody wants to buy a box in Canada, do they want to pay $35 in shipping and an additional huge amount of duties or taxes, whatever you guys charge beyond that, and then whatever we do here changes every week, and so it just made it, that seemed to make the most sense.
Mhm.
I don't
No, I
know.
get it.
Was there a different way that you would recommend?
No, I think you're kind of stuck with the breakdown of the scenario that you have for shipping. It's a shipping and logistics issue. You would have to be to get around that. You would have to be shipping something at scale. Like PSA has the ability to do so. PSA Canada can offer its service because they've made arrangements
Hmm.
at scale to be able to do it in a way that makes sense for them. There are businesses that can do that at scale because they've found ways to make that work for them. But you got to be able to do whatever it is on a volume enough. Like a 300 box product, whatever it is not enough volume for you to be able to work around
Yeah.
or basically do the type of paperwork that'd be required to make it viable for you to move stuff back and forth without that additional hiccup.
Well, what other issues do you kind of perceive that we should know about?
So right now, I think one of so I think the question about distribution is going to be one that's going to be part of
Hmm.
it. It'll be interesting to see. As you said, you've got a checklist, but one of the issues about one of the advantages, I'm going to put that in quotation marks. One of the advantages that some of these electronic versions of it has is that whether it works properly or not, if you pull something in an electronic repack that has a physical element that you can actually have the card shipped yourself, if there is a dynamic checklist, it can update in real time. A static checklist is just that. You will know what the original run of cards are, so 1
Yeah.
to 300, whatever that is, but you won't know if the Gretzky autograph you were hoping to get has already been pulled somewhere, or if it's sitting in a box. You won't know. You'll know that whatever is in front of you in the box, maybe you watched a couple of breaks and you know for a fact, okay, those cards are out. So you can kind of make a mental note those are out. But you won't have a clue in general. You'll know what the totality is, but as things, how many boxes are left and what's still left in the check box that hasn't been pulled yet, you won't have the full picture on that. It's not really a problem. It's just one of the challenges of a physical product versus the quote unquote electronic version.
Yeah, I think that is maybe a byproduct as an advantage, but I think the reason why those companies are doing that is because, and I don't ever foresee us scaling to that point, but if you wanted to do 80 million a month in sales to physically mail out boxes is would be a challenge. But I think the bigger challenge for those folks, again at the Amazon level scale of a repack company, is sourcing enough cards, and so by them offering immediate buybacks, that solves a massive sourcing problem for them.
Mm-hmm.
Where if they get, I don't know, I don't even know what percentage get bought back instantly, but let's say it's 50% even. Well, that's 50% less cards that they have to buy to feed the machine of people that want to buy those products.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Now here's kind of a side question, kind of pertaining to that same sourcing question. So let's play the hypothetical. Let's say this product works the way you're hoping. It sells well. You're able to go through it. Okay, great, great success. Every single time you do another one of these products, even though hockey's niche, as I was talking about on the podcast episode I recorded yesterday. So, what I would present to you from that perspective is one of the things that I think is a little bit of an interesting challenge that a lot of these products can come up with is, as you said, is that the electronic can do dynamic updates and all that
Hmm.
information included in it. But one of the challenges I think that a lot of these is the resourcing after the fact. As you said, buybacks can deal with part of the problem. But one of
Hmm.
the things that is a challenge, and like at Expo, perfect example of it. Since I'll use the example, I didn't use it originally, but I'll use it now. So Steve Angel, my buddy there, because I set up shop at his booth, I am privy to it and I get to see it firsthand. The Hit Parade guys will come by, and since Steve has really good stuff, they'll go and look through his stuff and cherry pick some pieces. And oftentimes he'll make a really good sale selling a bunch of stuff to
Yep.
Hit Parade and other repackers. That's a very common thing. Even in the niche of hockey, it's a big thing. Now, if the Hit Parade guys go and buy stuff like sticker autos, that doesn't fit the criteria you set, which is fine. But like I said, my hypothetical scenario, let's say it all plays out the way you want it to. The 300 sells well. Congratulations. We can get Phil a shiny new hat. Everybody wins. Great day. But then you decide, hey, maybe we can do a series two. Cool. Every time that goes out there on because there is no buyback kind of thing, now you have to kind of start over again. And you have your criteria, which helps limit the scope, but at the same time, that quality material becomes harder and harder to get the more rounds there are. So a 300 box thing was a challenge in of itself, but then a series two would be challenging as well because okay, so now those cars potentially are out, assuming they haven't come back into the ecosystem. Where do we find more stuff? So the sourcing becomes like this beast. You have to constantly feed it if you
Yeah.
succeed, especially. How do you keep feeding it hypothetically if you succeed?
Well, you get a really good partner, first of all, because
Mm-hmm.
again, it comes down to like, we're not good at that. Like going back to one of my business principles is focus on what you're good at. And that's something that we'll have to work through with AMG, but that's kind of the challenge and the fun of it. Why I'm most hopeful that
Mm-hmm.
this works out is just sort of like it's almost, I almost view it like content creation and being, it's the this is not a good paying job, but I love the creativity aspect of it. I would love the ability to do a vintage repack or a rookies or young guns or cup or something like that, where I think that you can get really creative and lean on the fact that first and foremost, we're just hobbyists that love these cards more than anything, and hopefully differentiate ourselves from other people that way. But yeah, I mean, I think we've set the bar high as far as our goals, and it was a challenge this first time to live up for that. I mean, I mean, the
Hmm.
conversation did happen where it's like, boy, this would have been a lot easier if we had sticker autos, and
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, but again, I told you, it's like good, wrong, right, bad, or indifferent. How I am looking at this is, if I opened up any one of these boxes, would I personally, with all my biases and subjective nature and opinions, would I look at a Wayne Gretzky sticker auto, and the first thing I can just tell you would be, holy crap, Wayne Gretzky auto. Oh, damn, it's a sticker auto.
Hmm.
And I just didn't want to put my name behind that.
Sure. I think that's fair. So let me ask you this. Well, I'll ask you a handful of questions here, and we'll wind down on that. And as you mentioned, I am a big fan. And I don't know if you can see it in the corner there. One of the running gags that I have on my channel is, in the corner I always put in our motto: "Praise the content gods." I'm a big
Okay.
fan of the content gods. I always praise, but especially when there's some entertainment value that comes of it. And as you guys are fully aware, we had a lot of fun with the Marcel Dion Connor McDavid conversation.
Hmm.
Eric is very pro Team Marcel, which made it much funnier for us.
Yeah.
Very entertaining from our perspective. Again, praise the content gods for that. But we'll have a follow-up conversation down the road about the content piece, because I have some questions I could ask you about that too. But from this perspective and this product, is there any other kind of hobby-related product that you'd be looking at? Repack obviously is a category, and you've got the podcast, and you've got the partnership with Slab Sharks, and you're working on all these other things. But from a product perspective, I don't know if I know you've got merch, but I don't know if that's an avenue that you actually sell the merch, or if it's just something that you have for giveaways or whatever. I'm not sure that piece of it. I know it exists, but I'm not sure how you've done with it.
Yeah.
But are there other verticals that you're looking at as part of what you're overall doing? Like, is there goals for Gong Show even beyond what you're doing right now? Because there's a lot of stuff, but thoughts beyond what you're currently doing.
We've kind of talked about everything, and the way that this whole experience for me has been, and this is just very much a personal side of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I kind of told you a little bit of our origin story, and it's the big happy accident of my life. I'm a very planful person. Like, I'm used to, oh, if I want to start a business kind of thing, well, I'm going to spend countless hours in performas and market research, and it's the one thing in my life that just took on a life of its own. And I really have, for 3 years now, given into that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, is there anything immediate beyond Reloaded? No. And part of it is capacity. I mean, we're really busy with stuff right now. And I believe in this. I don't know if it'll work. Like any, it's a test. And I don't, it may not work at all.
Mm-hmm.
It may need, it may work sort of, but there's legitimate feedback or issues or things that on the business side or logistics side that would need to be corrected, and we'll tackle that. It's a test.
Mm-hmm.
And, like I said, I spent a long time in new products, and I look at tests very unemotionally almost, right? Where I take it for what it is. We'll see. The hobby will vote with their wallets whether or not this is a product that they're interested in or not. And we'll move along from there. Now, it's been fun, and the best part about it is, going back to the whole AMG side, is that it is nice when you can find a partner where you just feel like we are totally on the same page with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have the desire to do a lot more of this, and to grow it and improve it and get better. But we'll see. But more often than not, we just, like, a good example is, I tell people this story all the time. We started our podcast. I don't know if you know him, almost to the day Breezy the Breaker started breaking.
Okay.
And he's the big kind of U.S. hockey breaker on Whatnot.
Sounds vaguely familiar, but I'm just trying to think, but not
Yeah,
too
he's
familiar, but
a
vaguely
very
familiar.
talented. He was a streamer, like a video EA Sports streamer,
Okay.
incredibly entertaining. Didn't know much about hockey cards at the time, but has built an amazing business where I'm sure he's made uh, massive amounts of money, because there's lots of money in breaking, and especially versus like podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of, well, should Gongshow do breaks has come up a lot, and for years now. And we've never done it. I don't think we ever will. Not because I inherently have something such against breaking. I just don't think we'd be very good at it. I don't think I would enjoy it. And even though there is a lot of, I think I would only be doing it for the money.
Hmm.
And that's just honest, right? If I were to do it. And so we haven't and we won't. But, and so what we try to do is pick projects that allow us to do this full time, allow this to, I have a kid in college. I have a
Hmm.
daughter starting college. And so I'm not, Carlos, I'm not shy that I'm trying to make money. You have a profession where you're trying to make money. Every company that exists wants to be successful. And I don't think that just because you're a hobby company that you shouldn't have that goal as well. But the reality is you only ever get very successful by delivering value to people. And so that's what Reloaded or anything else we do will come down to is that because the hobby's not dumb,
Hmm.
people aren't dumb, and whether the other thing I've learned about new products is that even this first one, it's like it might sell out if we're lucky based on the reputation we've worked hard to build over 3 years. But the true test is on the second, third, fourth, and fifth.
Hmm.
Right. That's where okay, is this a viable product? Is this something that the hobby wants? Is this something where we're additive to the hobby experience?
Hmm.
If people continue to come back, like from a marketing perspective, when I lived my corporate life, we used to classify it as triers versus customers. The first time somebody buys something, they're trying it. They're not really a customer. And the
Hmm.
whole idea was to have that mindset that don't fool yourself and think that this person that you got them,
Hmm.
that they love you and that they just tried it out. It's the second time when they come back, and the third time and the fourth time. Now it's a customer because you presume that they are buying again because they see and identify with the value that you're trying to create.
Hmm. Sure. I think it's a reasonable take on it, and I do appreciate that you're bringing kind of that perspective to it. As more mainly the main reason why I mentioned to Louis, and then obviously to yourself, that I wanted to talk through it. Again, I always let off the reason why I made sure to make the mention of it, and I did it on the podcast as well, is that there is an audience for this type of thing. It's a very specific audience. If anyone is a new collector,
Sure.
I always recommend singles because that is the most logical path for you to build a collection. If you're trying to curate a collection, that is the most obvious path. Anything with a breaking product or a mystery product or anything like that, or even boxes, it's not about collecting necessarily. Yes, you can pull cards for your collection, but it is kind of for the gamble. You are trying to, you're kind of crossing your fingers and hoping that, hey, maybe this will be the day that you pull that
It's
really
the
crazy
thrill
card.
of the chase. It
Yeah.
drives, like I said, everything we do. And I think the ultimate thing that I want to get out there about this is that uh, it's something that we're trying, it's something we believe in, it's something we're proud of, but we don't, nothing we do, we're a gong show. I mean, that's in our name, it's in our fabric. We're probably going to make mistakes. We're 100% open to feedback. And I believe I think in your career, right, it's like the most valuable thing any company can do is listen to its customers and listen to its audience. Kind of a quip is the first rule of sales is find out what people want and do that. And
Hmm.
that's in my fiber when it comes to. And so if anyone has questions or comments or concerns, um please talk to us about it. We'll do our best to answer and address. And if we're off path where and somebody enlightens us to maybe a better course, then we'll course correct
Hmm.
and do it that way. There's no ego in any of this. It's we're genuinely trying to create a good product for the hobby. And that's our intention. Will we deliver on that? Well, that's to be determined. But that's at least our intention.
Sure. So a couple questions then I'll ask you as I kind of lead you off. But one of them is going to be like, so when the time comes, you finally get you're sorting through the cards, you get the boxes back, you finally get a chance to distribute them. You do all that and you get it out there. How diligently are we watching the first couple of breaks? Because I'm looking forward to personally the when people start getting them in hand and some people start opening them up on camera, because that's what I want to see. I want to see the
Yeah.
reaction, the response, how people perceive it, how they perceived it going in, what kind of got them into looking into it, because that's always the fascinating part for me. Even if I'm not buying the product, the breaking, vicariously observing,
Yeah.
that's where the Zeries have done so well, is that no, just a curiosity, like, okay, how does Zeri respond to this product? He opens up these boxes, and of course he's got a unique style, but the question is like, okay, but how does the product play out when you actually get a chance to see it being opened?
Yeah, I mean, we'll find out what people think, and I have tough skin, right? And I don't take stuff like that personally. One of the things that I didn't get to maybe address from a few minutes ago is, again, all credit to AMG. I suck at buying cards. Uh, I don't think this is a one card product. Like, and I know you popped in. I did a little live stream last night on Instagram when we were looking at the cards.
Mm-hmm.
All I can give you is my opinion. There's so many that I'm like, holy crap, I would be elated to get a card like this. And I say that because I'm not afraid, and I don't think you should be afraid if day one somebody buys a box and opens it on Instagram and hits quote unquote one of the biggest or chase cards. I don't think that kills the product. It may for some. I don't know, but we're not trying to hide around everything. We want every card, all 300 cards, to stand on their own, knowing that there is a chase element. And if you're gonna have a chase, you have to have a ceiling and a floor. You can't have your cake and eat it too.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you could, like I said earlier, you could put $200 cards in a $200 repack, and everyone gets $200 card, right? But that's not what at all motivates this hobby. So it's like the old Tupac: "I was given this world, I didn't make it." Kind of,
Wow,
quote
quoting
where.
Tupac was not. I didn't have that one on the bingo card. Well played.
Okay, but so but yeah, so I mean, I hope people open it up on Instagram, and if they hit a big card and it's the first box, that's great, because I think there's other really big cards. And you know, once the checklist is out in a few days, hopefully you'll look at it and let me know and give me feedback and tell us, anybody out there, if hey, if you guys do this again, here's maybe some cards I would have included and cards I wouldn't have included, and we'll take that feedback. And if we're
Mm-hmm.
lucky enough to do it again, we'll, you know, if we agree with you, we'll course correct and do it that way.
Sure, I think that's fair. So let me kind of close off on this. I will include links to all the Gong Show things in the description, the new
Thank you.
Instagram page that's related to that. Now, let me ask you this, though. My audience, kind of, I have a little bit of fun with it. And this has always been one of my running jokes, especially with Eric on my show, because he is a hockey guy through and through.
Hmm.
And when I'm in Canada and I enjoy making fun of him, I enjoy playing the role of the American in this case by telling him hockey's not even real. And so I
Yeah.
enjoy poking at him. Again, with my Medano collection notwithstanding, what's funny, and the reason I'm explaining it this way, what's funny is that I consider myself a sports car, or trading card, sports card collector overall. Baseball was the first thing that I got into, even in Canada, because baseball is the game that I played. I didn't really play hockey. I played a little bit of road hockey, but that's about it for me. I do enjoy the sport, and obviously I got into it, and I'm here, so your
Sure.
exposure is constantly there. But I collect multiple sports and multiple things. So outside of my player collections, though, I'm not really a hockey card collector in general anyway. But I do have that connection to it because of all the things, the players that I
Well, you're
do collect.
Canadian, so you sort of have to a
Yeah,
certain
it's
degree.
contractually obligated, you get deported. So
Hmm.
that's part of it. But your show is specifically focused on hockey cards. So that's a
Yeah.
little bit different. So the reason why I say I want to kind of get an elevator pitch from you. So I say Hockey Card Gong Show. There is an element kind of played into the branding with the Gong Show piece. You've already referenced it multiple times. Give me the elevator pitch. What is the Hockey Card Gong Show to the uninitiated who may not be aware?
Well, it's a hockey card focused show where we don't take ourselves too seriously, and and our goal is to learn. Like, we're not trying to profess that we know more than you, than the listener. I'm at the stage of my life where I'm at like the History Channel stage, where I want to sit and learn about World War II, and my joy in the hobby is to research stuff and learn about it. And like I think at the start said, that's really what our show is about, is sharing that sort of research. The other thing we try to do is have fun. Um I don't want to judge what anyone else does, but and you tell me if I'm being unfair here, but so much of hobby content is like doom and gloom. The sky is falling, the earth is ending, the hobby's over, and everything wrong with every company, and it's very negative. I'm maybe people will criticize this, but I'm a very optimistic and positive person, and I do this hobby to have fun. I don't get the and I don't judge people that do. I don't get the enjoyment out of consuming stuff that of every reason why I wouldn't want to be in this hobby. Because I do look at some content creators and I think, boy, if somebody was like had their saw a big sale and had their curiosity piqued about collecting and went on YouTube and went and tried to find more information, it's like, would they actually enter this hobby based on what the content is out there? And so, while we try to be honest and real and authentic and constructively criticism where merited, a big part of what we do is just have fun and to, take the glass half full, glass half empty, take a little bit more of the glass half full approach and be goofballs and idiots and not take ourselves too seriously.
Sure, I think that's fair. And all I'll add is that I try to take the same approach to Friday. I think Louis has gotten a taste of that recently. Like I said, Eric is my Phil.
Okay.
And Phil appreciates that someone gets abused the way that he does. Although, to be honest, I've got so many things for Eric. So many. I've made video packages on that
You've
man.
probably known him longer.
Oh, I have, but nonetheless, like as soon as that poor boy came into the live stream one time, it's like the Hotel California. You can never leave, and
Yeah.
it's over for him. But I agree. I think you guys do take a lighthearted thing to it. I think one thing that I agree with your general premise about a lot of the content. I think though a lot of it comes down to a lot of people do take it too seriously. I literally have a tenant where we've said there are no sacred cows. We don't take this hobby seriously. I refuse, actively refuse. And the other piece of the puzzle, though, I think it helps though if you have been around it longer. You kind of see the ebbs and flows, the waves. Like
Sure.
I've seen manufacturers disappear entirely. So after a while, it's like what the manufacturer does, one way or the other. I can't control it. I can give them feedback, like where they ask, I can provide it. But oftentimes, this too shall pass, and there are going to be scandals in the hobby. There are going to be people that do wrong
And
things.
people
That's all going
love
to be part of it.
that, right? And but here's like what I don't understand, and I say this not out of judgment, it's out of a lack of understanding. Where I see people that are so angry a lot, it seems like. And then I wonder,
Mhm.
well, why do you do this if it makes you angry? Why would you just not do something else that makes you happy?
There are a lot of people who legitimately enjoy hate watching things. That is a thing. Like, and funny enough, sometimes when someone really dislikes it, they become a bigger fan. Like they will observe, they will watch like a
Oh yeah,
hawk.
the whole hate watcher thing of content is very. We learned that right away. It's like but I'm even talking about not just content creators, but like people that are so mad about everything, and I don't. Maybe I think of things too literally at times, or too where it's like, well, if I had something that was a hobby, which is supposed to be a pastime, supposed to be a release or refuge from the stresses and daily grind of life, and all it does is make me angry, then why would I do that? Like I said, I just don't know.
It's a philosophical question. It's a valid one. And funny enough, I don't think we have an answer to it because there are some people who, and I'll see them in the comment section too. I think they live to have, they're ready, regardless of what the video is or what the content is, they're ready to have the angry comment because they are upset about it, but they don't leave. They stick around and
Yeah.
they have to get at the
Well,
comment.
and positivity often gets misconstrued with being Pollyanna. And I'm not trying to advocate for that. Like if there is a legitimate controversy or if there is a legitimate criticism, then I think that those are more than merited. And those are good discussions to have in the spirit of learning. And so it is a balance. And um, but yeah, I mean, the I've been, in particular, I've been accused a lot of being too positive, which is kind of a funny thing if you think about to be um, accused of.
I've been told from previous episodes that you can go into a dark place. So it's just funny to me that you're also too positive at the same time. It's a bit of
Oh, really?
whiplash with you. Like, you know, pick a lane, my man. Pick a lane.
Oh, okay.
What's it gonna
Well,
be?
yeah. Well, there. If all I can be is me, Carlos. Just like, and that I have to be able to live with that, the good and the bad.
It's valid. Well, on that bombshell, that's a valid point. So I appreciate you coming in to chat with me about it. We got a little bit extra. Hopefully, you folks enjoyed. We did discuss the repack. We did discuss a lot of elements to it. It is forthcoming, and a lot of the information will be, like I said, in the description. In it, Hockey Card Gongshow information will be in the description. And for those of you who want to check it out, I will say I'll add one thing that Josh kind of left out. One thing that I like, and again, this plays into my sensibilities, and I do that with my live streams, is that we talk about different hobby topics, but we also talk about general stuff, you know. And the Gong Show has that as well. You've got the dynamic with the three guys that are on there oftentimes. And if it was just talking about hockey cards, let me be blunt, a 3 hour show which is talking about hockey cards, I am already falling asleep as we speak. You have to have these other components to it. You can have the segments talking about that, or you can talk about Phil having elective surgery in different places of his body.
Well, okay. So to be like, and I don't know if this is similar to you, as we're both very much, I love content. I love,
Mm-hmm.
and I was always a huge fan of, and still am, of the Howard Stern show.
Sure.
And so to some degree, the Gong Show pays homage to that, and Baba Louie, right? Baba Booey. So I mean, there's a very literal sort of tribute in that way. But if you had to like break down the formula of our show, it's 1/3 hockey cards,
Mm-hmm.
1/3 hobby, and 1/3 goofballs. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's and to entertain, because you're right. I mean, as much as I love to do a 12-hour deep dive into the value changes in 2021 Young Guns, that is not, that satisfies my nerdy impulses, but it's not probably entertaining
Mm-hmm.
for people as a whole. And so we try to our best to balance those things out, and just be as authentic as we can, good and bad, and warts and all. And like with the repack, I can't imagine that things are going to go perfectly, because they never do.
Mm-hmm.
And all we can do is commit to owning it when a mistake is made, fixing it, and rectifying the situation for anyone that was affected. That's all I would ask of my employees back in the day, and that's all I can ask of myself.
Sure. And I think that's a great way to kind of go out on it. So hopefully you folks get a chance to check it out if you haven't already. That's why I said, if you are interested in the hockey cards, it is valid in terms of that. I do also, bonus, I will give compliments to the chef that I do appreciate that it is segmented into chapters, which is extremely helpful for me. There's some stuff I already know and I kind of want to skip ahead a little bit, but it's
Fair.
helpful to have those chapters to guide you
It's a
in
3 hour
the
show.
direction.
We get that. I mean, that's
I do 4+ hour live streams. I'm not going to criticize long form content,
yeah.
but
No,
it
I
is
love
nice to have the
long form
chapters.
content. Yeah, well, that's the whole idea, is to eat off the menu.
Mhm. Absolutely. So thank you, Josh. I appreciate you joining in. Hang tight for a second. I'm going to end the recording. Those of you, you're going to see the outro, but then hopefully this is helpful to you. If you got additional questions, though, put them in the comment section. If you got any additional thing, I can follow up with these guys. The lines of communication are open, so we can chat on that. And then we'll see how this one plays out. And again, on AMG's podcast, we addressed it also. That link will be in the description as well, from their perspective, to get their side of how they built it and the thought process behind it. So hopefully those two things together give you a full spectrum understanding of what it is, so that you can decide for yourself if you're interested in it or not. But at least now you know more about it in general. That's it for this one. We'll catch you in the next one.
Thank you, Carlos. Bye.